Alexe, thanks a lot for that introduction. So I leave you now to Daniel Jositsch. Jositsch. Sorry.
Jositsch is enough. Yes.
Welcome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of Israel, I'm very happy to be here today with you to start with this group, with this alliance group of parliamentarians for Israel. As Corinna Eichenberger said, we are from the same small country, from Switzerland. She's in one house now of the parliament. I was with her 8 years in the same. We came the same election. We were elected at the parliament. I was 8 years now with her, and I could change now to the other chamber, to the Senate. So we are representing both chambers of Swiss parliaments. And I think, and we see that in our work in Swiss Parliament, that it is quite difficult to represent the interests of Israel in a European Parliament. And it is really important that we work together. For example, if I can take the example of Switzerland, maybe, we are working together from different parties. Corinna and I, we are not in the same party. I am a member of the Social Democratic Party. And we work together because we take from the different points of view of the different parties, we try to take influence in the daily parliamentarian work in favor of Israel, that people understand in the parliament, but also outside the parliament, that they understand the special situation Israel is, and the special interests also, and to work on a peace process in the Middle East conflict. And as you maybe know also from other countries in Europe, it is difficult sometimes to take the position of Israel. And I have the impression that in the press and in the public discussion in Switzerland, but I think in most countries of Europe, the pro-Palestinian forces are very well represented, very well organized, and that the pro-Israel forces are not so good interconnected and not so good represented in the public discussion. And in political process, in political discussion, in democratic countries, so I think in more or less all countries in Europe, it is important to take the forces together. As my grandfather said once to me when I was a little child, with a match, you can make a small fire. If you have 1,000 persons and everyone has a small match, you can make a big fire. And that's the same situation also, I think, in parliamentarian processes. For example, my party, Social Democratic Party, is in its majority very critic against Israel and very in favor also of pro-Palestinian forces. So we made a small group. It's a small group of representatives of parliamentarians of all levels in Switzerland, from the Social Democratic Party, and we said, okay, we try to organize something, a small group, but when there is a problem, when there is a discussion in the parliament about something that's related with Israel, we speak together, we organize our communication, and we communicate at all levels in the party to show that there is not one person that has another opinion, but there are many persons or a few persons that have another opinion. And for example, when we were dealing in the party about how to to which position to take when there was a discussion about boycott of Israeli products. Then then different persons in the party made emails, went to reunions and said we don't agree with that. We have another opinion. And then the leaders of the party had the impression, okay, we have different voices in the party, so the party doesn't say anything. So we could neutralize the discussion. And I think this is really important. I think this is really important in parliamentarian processes. And it's also important at the European level at the same way. We have to organize ourselves that we can coordinate our positions in the different parliaments to get more in a more strong position in this discussion. And for that, you see, we are not a lot of countries represented here today, but I think, and that's the important thing, we are a few, and we can start with that. The important is that you talk also to your members of parliament in your countries, that we can make our position, that we can coordinate with other members of other parliaments, so that we start from that maybe a little group we have now to a big group to coordinate the parliamentarian pro-Israeli forces in Europe. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so the next speaker you all know from yesterday, Olav Syversen, please.
Thank you, and I'll be short since I took my time yesterday. Let me start by pointing out that we have a friendship group with Israel within the Norwegian Parliament, and as of now, I think it's about 35 members of Parliament within the group and representing 4 different parties, and that's also important that we can have differences in views, in policies, and the caucus, this friendship group, doesn't pursue certain political points, but we meet to discuss and to get information. That's the main topic, and then the parties themselves specify their policies. But it's important that the Labour Party has people within the group, the Conservative Party, the Progress Party, and the Christian Democrats. And we should have more, but we are working on that. But this formation of European alliance and also an alliance of parliamentarians, I think it's very important. It was mentioned that the pro-Palestinian groups, they are pretty good organized. And we see that especially when it comes to this BDS movement, boycott, divestment, sanctions. They pursue every parliament, every possible way to make their case, also in Norway. You see it in papers, you see it everywhere on the net and so forth. And I hope that this alliance between parliamentarians and also MIFF groups in other countries, as you have formed that alliance 1 year ago, can make us unite in our strength to counter these measures that are taken by the BDS movement especially. With the formation of the new government, there was one point that was agreed upon by the 4 parties, and let me stress that because it seemed like it was obvious in its context. It said the 4 parties want a balanced attitude when it comes to the Middle East conflict. And you know, when you have been in the Norwegian public debate, that's a large step if we get a balanced attitude. So let's hope we can maintain that as a goal for us. And I think we should work together, the different organizations, the parliamentarians, to use the possibilities we have. It's another world now with the social media, because you can get across to people without getting from the editor, no, we will not print what you sent. Now we can go out ourselves and we can get the message through. And as I said yesterday, and I'll finish with that, the most powerful message is a message that is fact-based, and everyone can check it and they will find out it is the truth. Thank you.
So we have now more than half an hour for questions. But before I open the floor, I want to ask the panel some questions. And as they speak, if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I will get a sense of how much time we will leave for questions from the audience. But I was wondering, Alexe, if you could elaborate more about, briefly about the Romania-Israel relations and how it compare maybe to other countries in Europe, and also more how you got a heart to involve yourself with the pro-Israel work.
Thank you, Conrad, for the question. My first contact was when I was little. I was the first elected local councillor in Bucharest, and my local district, it's where the Jewish neighborhood is. So I actively support the high school, the Jewish high school, the kindergarten there, and all the work of the people there. It's a wonderful work, and they do a tremendous job in the middle of Bucharest to conserve and to preserve the Jewish legacy. So that was my first contact, and now I'm member of parliament representing that downtown area of Bucharest. And now I'm a member of the friendship group between Romania and Israel. And in Romania, the attitude is very good. And I hope to see in all countries this attitude. I spoke with other friends from other countries, and I saw that the Palestinian anti-Jewish marketing campaign worked well. In Romania, we are on the good track, I think.
Yeah. So generally, the media is balanced and neutral. Yeah. Good. So basically, I have the same question for you, Jositsch. Daniel, should we call you Daniel?
Yes.
You told me the day before yesterday a little bit about your background, and I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear how you got involved.
Yes, I don't know how interesting my background is, but maybe with the context of Israel, I come from a Jewish family, so it's logic that I had a strong relationship with Israel, with its history, and with the actual problems. And when I was elected into the parliament 8 years ago, it was clear for me that this would be one of the things I have to deal with, to look at the relationship between Switzerland and Israel is going on a good level. I think Switzerland could play an important role, not the most important, but an important role in a peace process in the Middle East. It has tried a few years ago, but I think it could play a role, an important role. And I think the most important is to find to find a way in the peace process. I think what people want on both sides of the actual conflict is peace, and they know that you can't. Finally, you can't. That's my opinion. Have peace on a military way, but you need it on a way where you can deal and where you can understand each other, and where the people can live in a peaceful way together, and that must be the goal. And I think Switzerland can play there maybe a helpfully role as a neutral country. And I think that's for me that's work we have to do, and we can try. In the parliament, you're not alone. You can't decide alone, but you're one of a few members that can influence the discussion, that also can influence a little bit the government, and I think that's what we try to do.
Thank you. You want to comment?
Well, since you ask about the more personal side, I can give a few notes from my own family. And why do you take an interest in Israel? And you can ask yourself that question, and we will have some different answers. But I can give you a few from my own background, if that's okay. Well, I had a grandmother. She passed away years ago, but she had one wish, and she was a farmer, you know, not many resources financially, but she had one goal besides going to Sweden, which was only 5 kilometers away. And you can imagine what goal it was: to go to Israel. And she made that trip when she was in her late 60s. And then I was in my teens. So when she came back, she ordered the whole family to come to the farm. I'm going to give you a lecture. And the lecture is very familiar to many Norwegians because it was slides, lysbilder in Norwegian. And I'm sure you've seen slides, many of you. So the whole family had to sit there, and it was quite a few, and we got through everything. And you know, when a grandmother says that something is important, you oblige. So that was the start of it, maybe. I don't know, but you know how it is. If you have one seed, it can make a great harvest. It can make a great harvest. And hope that also for this assembly that we can see the same. And then when I had my... When I had my service in the army up north, we were asked if we wanted to go to a volleyball game between Norway and Israel. And I said, yes, I can organize that. We got a bus from the military. We went 70 kilometers. And I was so surprised because what happened there was a demonstration against the Israeli team. And I wasn't even thinking of the possibility that it would be a demonstration there. But even more happier we were to be there. But the problem was a bit when we watched the match, who should we favor? But of course, Norway is Norway, and we had to go with Norway. But I think it was an eye-opener for me that even such a nice event, athletes from Norway and Israel having a good time together, that also became a problem for some, a disputed event. And finally, I have to say we have in my family, because as you heard from my mother's side, we have a farm still only a few kilometers from the Swedish border. And my mother's uncle, he was one of those taking Jews and other refugees on a route from Norway to Sweden during the Second World War. And it's a heritage for my family. I didn't really know too much about it because, you know, a lot of people during the war, whatever they did, they didn't speak. And I didn't see this part of our history before he showed up in one of our major newspapers, Verdens Gang, in the late 70s. So that's how it goes. We are too silent sometimes in this country.
Yeah, what an encouragement for all the grandmothers here. What an impact you can do. And grandfathers. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I think now I open the floor for questions. And then I need a help. Alf, maybe you can help us with the microphone. So the delegates from France, they have to decide whom to start first. Yeah, over there.
Thank you. I'm Professor Lobel from France, and I'm very happy to be in this session because I believe that this is the eye of our association to contact parliamentarians. My question is, in each of our countries, how many parliamentarians are you and how many friends of Israel are you? And the subsidiary question is, how many you need to have a real impact? That's the first question. And the second question is, what is your next task in your group to help the relationship with Israel?
Okay. Thank you for your question. First, the Romanian Israeli group, it's 30 people. And at the second question, from 500 parliamentarians. So we are quite a lot. At the second question, my first job will be to write a letter, to sign this letter and to send to as many parliamentarians in the countries of Europe I can. I spoke with my colleagues to contact all our friends to try to enlarge the group and also to have a database with all these friends of Israel and to try to contact them by social media and all the way we can.
Okay. Okay. We have in Swiss parliaments, in both chambers, there are 246 members. I don't know really the parliamentarian group, Switzerland, Israel. I don't know how much they are. 50 about. But you have to see that they are not all at the same level engaged, and not all parties are represented the same way. As far as I know, we have especially right-wing parliamentarians that are in this pro-Israeli group. And if I honestly said, sometimes the motives are not always the same. No, sometimes it's difficult. For example, we have in Switzerland, we have a law, an anti-racial discrimination law that was made 20 years ago, and we have people that is in favor, always member of the Israel of the pro-Israel group. And on the other hand, they fight against the law to fight racial discrimination. And for me, it's sometimes really difficult to see what position different peoples in the group have. So if you speak about 50 members of parliament, I would say that maybe it's a bit too much. The impression you have that it's a bit too much. So you don't even know which are the motives really. So it's a bit less, I would say.
Yes, I don't have the exact number, but I believe it's around 35 out of 169. And if you know the history of the Friends of Israel in the Norwegian Parliament, it used to in the early 70s, almost half of the Parliament was member of this friendship group. Then it dropped, and until late 80s, it was no activity at all. And then around 10 years ago, we started up again, and now the number is around 35, which is pretty good for a friendship group. Pardon?
I think this is the biggest.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest friendship groups within the parliament, yes. When it comes to next steps, well, I have in a way jumped into this alliance yesterday, so maybe I should sleep on it a while. But let me say, I hope we can get as many of those who are member of the friendship group within the Norwegian Parliament to also join the European alliance. That's one step, and then we have different approaches to different themes. I mean, we heard Itamar Marcus earlier today. It's obvious that we have to address this to our foreign minister. In a way, I just got the report, so I will sit down and read it, but it seems like the funding has just taken another river, and it's coming to the same source as it did before. Also, you heard our Minister of Energy. I didn't hear him, but I know probably what he said. And I mean, there are a lot of possible cooperations between Norway and Israel. We should pursue it. And we hope that all these activities will make the public aware of the broader cooperation between Norway and Israel and not only focusing on a certain conflict. Thank you.
So we give now the next question is from for Charles Mayer from France.
In France, to fight against disinformation and against BDS, we have a law which says that it's a criminal offense. Boycott is a criminal offense because it's discrimination. This weapon is very useful beside the political fight. And we reached in France many case laws, for instance, in our Cour de Cassation, which is the Supreme Court, and this helps to fight against BDS. Can we expect to have such a legislation in different parliaments, especially in yours? This is a question. And then I want to inform you that in France, one of the members of our honorary committee is Claude Goasguen, who is a former minister, member of the parliament, and I will organize a contact with you. He will join you for sure.
Thank you.
No, I'm very interested to see the legislation, and we will try to improve our legislation also. It's clear that this is a way, and we'll walk this way. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll contact. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't know the French law in details really. In Switzerland, you have also it can also be a criminal defense to make a boycott, to organize a boycott. But you have, on the political level, you have the possibility to take sanctions on the political level from the part of the government, and that's obviously it's not a crime. But I think we have already a law based on in Switzerland against boycott. But I would be interested to see which is the French solution, to look if it's maybe a way to strengthen the Swiss law. And I think that could be important in this alliance, because the advantage we have as parliamentarians is that we can try at least to take a direct influence on the lawmaking decisions. And if we see from other countries that there are propositions, that there are ideas that could be helpful also in our parliamentarian discussion and work, it would be very helpful to submit this information. So I would be very happy if I could have that. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, we have amendments also in Norwegian law on certain levels when it comes to boycott. And I can mention one example where it was used in Parliament to stop a certain possible boycott. I'm sure many in this audience remember that the university in Trondheim, NTNU, almost started an academic boycott of Israeli academics. It was countered by thousands of other academics throughout the world that said if NTNU does this, we will boycott this university in Norway. So that was helpful too. But we put forward in Parliament a question to the then Minister of Higher Education, and she, and very fair, she was from the left, Socialist Left Party, which is quite pro-Palestinian, but she declared in Parliament that it would be against Norwegian law, boycott law, if NTNU started an academic boycott. So that was very helpful, and it was based on Norwegian amendments in certain laws.
The next question is from Czechia. Please present yourself.
Hello, I'm Zbigněk Pastor from Prague, Czech Republic, Czech Friends of Israel. Just one question back. If I'm not wrong, I think boycott is a criminal law under European law, because in Czech Republic it was adopted a couple years ago from European law. It wasn't ours, so it should be the same in all European countries. When we had a discussion with our colleagues from Czech Parliament, by the way, the vice presidents of both chambers of Czech parliaments are the friends of Israel. We just tell them that not only the boycott is the criminal act. Furthermore, did you any hear about the boycott of the Gibraltar goods or of the North Cyprus goods? So this is always the good question to them. But back to the question about the next steps, next goal of your activities in the parliaments. You're now working against BDS, which is logical. I have to say I was deeply touched by presentations of Israel non-governmental organizations. They are here this weekend providing us information about financial ties in between European Union, the member states, and the financing the organizations that are closely connected to terrorism. I think that we all know that the easiest way how to fight the terrorism is stop to finance it. So I think you already mentioned it. I think it's the most important goal, which is for you as a parliamentaries for the future, to get the information from these Israeli NGOs use them in your parliaments and to ask how it's possible that you still finance terrorism. Doesn't matter if it's not direct, can be indirect. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all will work together to do that. Yeah, you will have a question, but first Jan Benjamin, and then Bjarne Schirmer, and then to you. So these will be the last 3 questions before we close.
Thank you. My name is Jan Benjamin Rodner. A couple of years ago, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee in Norway gave the Peace Prize to the EU. And the reasoning for giving it was that instead of sending bullets and cannonballs over the borders, they were doing commerce and sending merchandise and money in different directions over the borders, making commercial cooperation a vehicle of peace in Europe, as we know it. And so, if we think in the same way and do the same reasoning to the BDS campaign, to me it seems that the BDS campaign is a campaign for war and against peace. And my question is, how come they can get away with a campaign that really is for war and claiming it's some weird way of working for peace? Thank you.
So I think he's asking you to speak out clearly against BDS, and I give you the floor.
Okay. In my speech, you saw that I tackled this problem, and I'm outraged with what happened, and even my Czech colleague say about the European regulation. The European regulation permits this and allows this boycott, and the fact the labeling of different product will help the boycott. No, because you'll specify, you'll identify the products. So I think we have to think through, to see all the legislation in other countries and to help to stop this process. Thank you.
I have a comment or an addition to what our representative in the Storting said about the balance. Also, now it's out of question that Norway's government, present government, is coming up with any sort of controversial attitude towards Israel. We have officially from our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Børge Brende, that said in 1 year ago in the annual meeting of the Conservative Party in Buskerud that this government will never ever suggest a boycott. But the point is, as you mentioned, will it be possible to say that, well, does that goes for indirect boycott? And you were saying that it was an ongoing discussion in our parliament that the funding for certain objects were up for discussions. Could it be used that when he is guaranteeing that this government is not going in for boycott, it will also prevent indirect boycott? Do you think that this is something that we in MIFF or other privates should take up in our respective fora, or should we leave it to you? I have a feeling it will be a better result if we leave it to you, but what is your opinion? No, really. It's rather important for me to know. I don't know the others, but because you can go very far by saying that indirect and direct is the same thing. Thank you.
Yes, I can. I think joint efforts are better than single efforts. So it will, of course, be a discussion, I think, also within the foreign ministry. What is the definition of indirect boycott? But I have to admit that we have one hurdle here, and it's the fact that Norway heads the donor community. And it makes it sensitive also internationally for the foreign minister to, in my view, that's a personal view, to put more pressure on the Palestinian side, because as a leader of the donor community, he feel, I think, obliged to see to it that the Palestinian Authority has a certain leverage on its possibility to govern the West Bank, and also by that measure to oppose Hamas in Gaza. So it's not an easy issue to raise, but let's try. Let's try.
Yeah, the next question is from Mr. Daniel Citon. He's the president of B'nai Brit Europe. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. It's not exactly a question, but I wanted to tell you what we are, as B'nai Brit, we are doing about BDS, because we think that is one of the first things that we have to work on, since it's one of the main way that is used to attack Israel in Europe. I'm in touch with a network of lawyers who are active all over Europe to attack BDS on the legal point of view, using the local legislation that are in each countries of Europe. And at the same time, recently I was in touch with an international law firm to ask them to review the local legislations to see which legislations are present in the local countries and which can be used, and where there are not legislation. And this is a first step to see if it's the case to propose new legislations in the local countries, in the local European countries. And I think that we can work together on this way. I think that we should try to propose to approve new legislation in the local countries. About the European Union, I spoke with some representatives of the European Union, and they said that they about the labeling, and they said that they didn't want to propose that regulation, but it was asked from the members countries to approve this legislation, and they are not in favor. I don't know if we can believe them. However, they said that from their point of view, the labeling is a completely different thing from BDS. We know, of course, that labeling is used by the BDS movements to justify their action, but I think that we can use the approval of the regulation about the labeling to ask to the European Parliament to approve something against BDS, against the boycott, since they say that they are two different things. So they say this, they should prove that they are treating them in two different ways. So they approved, you know that in politics, sometimes you have the possibility to ask something if they did something against you. So maybe we can use the labeling to ask to the European Union to approve something against the boycott.
Thanks for that comment. We have one brief question from Grete Rønning. That will be the last question, sorry, because we have to be ready after a break for the Knesset member.
It's just about some organization stuff. And I apologize if I should have known it. But the European Alliance for Israel and how is about the Parlamentarian Alliance is what's the connection or not connection? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I should answer that as a vice president of European Alliance for Israel. European Alliance for Israel is what MIFF has joined last year in Berlin, and it's a network of sister organization, pro-Israel organization across Europe. Until now, we have about 15-20 countries committed. And now, these sister organizations, through the European Alliance network, we put the seed, like Hans Olav was saying, to start an alliance and a network of parliamentarians. So we, EIA, as a network, will try to serve this and grow together with this parliamentarian group. It's like Israel's venner på Stortinget in Norway and MIFF. It's not, we are two totally separate organizations, but we cooperate together and share each other's guests from Israel, etc. So we at 2:15 there will be we will be ready for the deputy speaker of the Knesset. So there is no more time now for question, but we leave a closing remark for Mr. Alexe, and also there will be a 10-minute break, but we will start not Indian or Israeli stretchable time, but 2:15 sharp. So please.
I would like to thanks to an important friend of Israel in Romania. He's present in this hall. His name is Mihai Ionescu. He's the president of Cultural Friendship Association Romania-Israel. And more important, he will be the host of the next General Assembly of EAI in Bucharest next year. And also, I invite all the parliamentarians that want to join us to be there in Bucharest next year. Thank you very much, and see you in Bucharest.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for everyone coming, and especially thanks to Ambassador Shmuel Revel, who has been together with us the whole weekend. Thanks a lot. So we look forward now to the next session with Knesset member Hilik Bar at 2:15.